Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Rabbit Hole Reviews. Today we are going to take a look at the East German licensed copy of the Soviet Makarov PM service pistol. So what we have here is a very faithful copy of the Soviet Makarov in 9x18. So just as a point of reference moving forward, whenever I talk about an East German Makarov, they're all chambered in 9x18. There's no subvariants that had different chamberings for export. They only came in one caliber, so that makes it simple. So, wow, what do I like about the East German Makarov? Well, basically everything within the context of when these were made. So this is a 1965 production East German Makarov, made the last year of production. Interestingly enough, they made these only from 1958, 59 through 1965. So this is the tail end of the production. These are all police military issue sidearms. There's no real civilian production. They weren't really aiming for that. This is pre-1989. This is well within the Cold War. East Germany is not exporting firearms to the West for cash. At least not yet, until they fall apart and they reunify, and then they need money. But what sets this gun apart? I view the East German Makarov as the Cadillac. I know that's a cliche term that people like to throw around. The Cadillac of Makarovs. Not just the PM design, but any pistol chambered in 9x18 Makarov. This is the cream of the crop. This feels like a commercially made pistol that you would buy in West Germany or in France or anywhere. It doesn't feel like a mass-produced, made in a Soviet style crank them out factory, just good enough philosophy. The fit and finish of the parts is very good. The parts almost feel like they're hand fitted and polished. It's just the bluing is commercial grade bluing. It's deep, it's rich, it's even. It just feels like a more substantial pistol. It doesn't feel rattly. It doesn't feel tinny. It's just very well made. I view it as commercial grade as 1965 East Germany is going to allow you to be. Right. So I always take the cynical route and I look at things like what were they making back in 1965? What was going through their minds? And I'm surprised that what was going through their minds was to generate and make a better quality pistol that really was necessary, I think. But kudos to them because the East German Kalashnikov also is very well made too. So the East Germans, remember, they're still Germans. So they carry on that German tradition of manufacturing while they're behind the Iron Curtain as a member of the Warsaw Pact. So I think that's where that comes from. Their just attention to detail and their perfectionism and their pride in craftsmanship that you're probably not going to get in something like a Kugir Romanian gun. Not to criticize Romanian firearms. I have many and they're all excellent, but they're just made to a certain spec that is just overall lower. The function and everything else will be identical. You're not going to have any degradation in performance, but the aesthetics and the build quality are just not there because they don't have to be, right? They're not selling these to a discerning public, at least not yet. So let's go over some of the specs of a Makarov. First thing you're going to notice right away is the heel magazine release. So a la P38, a la SIG 225, 230, all that stuff. That's it's a European thing, and they hung on to it with the Makarov. And I can understand why they did it. It's a philosophy of use where, these are not designed for rapid magazine changes. You've got 8 rounds in a magazine, single stack mag. These are either badges of rank for officers or issued to technical specialists, warrant officer types in the Soviet motor rifle units. Just people who don't need a Kalashnikov are getting these. So it's not designed to be a combat handgun. It's a self-defense weapon. And I think in that role, they achieved what they were looking for, especially given that this is 1940s, 1950s technology. It still holds up for that use. Let's go over some specs and knock that out. The claimed weight on this is 26 ounces. So that 26 ounce number, they don't differentiate how they come up with that number. I'm going to say that's 26 ounces with an empty magazine in the magazine well. So we're going to test that now. And then after we test that, to see if those numbers are somewhat close, we're going to test what it weighs with a loaded magazine. So we're going to add 8 rounds of 9x18 Makarov to see what your actual operational carry weight would be. My scale is running out of battery, so hopefully I can get a few more points of reference here before it decides to give up the ghost. Okay, we get it. It's low. I'm going to say it's very close just by the feel of it in my hand. All right, well, before it decided to give me that error message, it was 25 ounces. So I have weighed this before and it came in at 25 ounces. So I already knew the answer to that. So it is 25 ounces. This is a sample size of 1. Keep that in mind. So now we're going to test the pistol with a loaded magazine. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the weapon. Of course, all these things are safety checked. As you can see, weapon is clear. If you noticed, this has a chrome lined barrel. If you notice the chromium around the crown and you see the chrome in the chamber, it's a chrome lined barrel. That's a nice thing to have in a pistol. Something I didn't think that the East Germans would bother doing, seeing as how a lot of other countries don't bother chrome lining their pistol barrels. Yes, this is for duty use, but I think it shows an attention to detail and the eye, almost like a Yugoslav philosophy where they build guns a little bit nicer than they need to be because they plan on keeping them for several decades, a la RPK style receivers, thicker barrels, things like that. So they chrome lined a Makarov or Makarov barrel with the idea that the barrel is going to be around for decades. I think that's my opinion. So, all right, moving on. We have a loaded magazine. I'll get to the ammunition in a second. That's kind of a point of interest in and of itself. We get one more. All right, 27.85 ounces. So you're looking at roughly 3 ounces of weight, and all that 3 ounces is, roughly 3 ounces, is the weight of the 8 9x18 Makarov cartridges. We'll go ahead and weapon is clear. Notice how when you take this weapon off safe, this is something different. So it's on safe right now. To make it go to fire, you decock and you push down on it to make it from safe to fire. See, so red is dead, like we always talk about. And then this is how you would carry it. You would load the pistol. Let's say I have a magazine and I let the slide go for the slide release, and I chamber a round. So now I have a round in the chamber, hypothetically, and the hammer back. So to make it safe, you push up on the pistol. That decocks the hammer, locks everything in place, locks the trigger, locks the slide, locks the hammer, nothing's moving. If you want to take it off safe, you just simply take your thumb, swipe it down. And that's how, if you were to carry this concealed carry, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm assuming that's how you would carry it. Round in the chamber, hammer decocked, weapon on fire, ready to draw, present, and squeeze the trigger. I don't recommend carrying it with the weapon on safe. I mean, that's entirely up to you, but that's a whole nother level of fumbling and under duress, you may forget to do. You're probably not going to forget to draw the pistol and fire it, but you may forget that you have the weapon on safe. So this is how you'd carry it, like so. All right, so would I carry this gun? No, I wouldn't, but people did. Now, I bought this gun in roughly 1994, thereabouts, early 90s. I can't remember exactly when I did. But to give you an idea of how long ago it was, here's the ammunition that I'm using for today's, not test, but just for tabletop reviewing. If you look, that is copper washed, steel cased ammo. And it is something you don't see every day. That's China North Industries Norinco 9x18 Makarov ammo that I purchased At some point, probably prior to 1994, because they stopped allowing it to be imported around there. So this is early 90s importation and purchased ammo. I paid $11 for it for a box of 50. I don't know if that's a good price or bad, but that's probably what I paid back then. So that's, I guess the box, this box right here is probably almost as collectible as the gun, right? Unless you're Canadian, you're not buying any of this. So anyway, moving on, we won't talk about the Norinco ammo that I've stockpiled. Would I carry this gun as a concealed weapon or have it as a bedside gun? The answer to both those questions is no and no. You're looking at a gun that is 4 ounces shy of 2 pounds loaded with 8 rounds of 9x18 Makarov with a heel magazine release and no ability to mount any kind of light or optic of any sort, no micro dots, nothing. That's not what this pistol was intended for. Even if they had those things back then, I don't think they would have even put those on there. This is 1940s technology. And not only that, you're paying in 2022 a premium for these guns. This gun in this condition, it's probably $600-700, probably $600. I don't know. I don't check up-to-date prices, but in casual, observation, I've seen Makarovs going for $500-600 plus, depending on the condition, the make, the accessories that come with it. You're not getting into one for under $500, not a nice one. And so for that money, you are now in 2022 looking at a whole host of weapons, pistols, I should say, that outclass it in every way. So in order to keep this video under 20 minutes and not go way down a rabbit hole, I will compare this gun to one gun that I did carry. That is the Smith & Wesson Shield 2.0. Why do I use that as a point of comparison? Well, the Smith & Wesson Shield is lighter than this. It carries the same magazine capacity, same round count, and it carries 9mm parabellum, which is a more effective round. It has more stopping power. It's the most popular pistol caliber in the world. It has tons of different loadings you can get. It's less expensive to buy and hence less expensive to practice with. The trigger is better. I can guarantee you it's lighter. The sights are both adjustable front and rear, and not adjustable, but you can change them out for Trigicons. They're drift adjustable in the rear, just like the Makarov. It has a magazine button, so you can do, I don't know if you do magazine, tactical reloads on a Smith & Wesson Shield. That's not really what its design philosophy is either, but you can load and unload a Smith & Wesson Shield considerably quicker than a Makarov, in my experience. Right? So this is all coming from my point of view. And to top it all off, not only is it outclassing it in every major category, it is also roughly half the cost. So to me, if you're wanting something that's inexpensive, has this roughly 8 rounds of capacity, now they have guns that are even better than that, than the Smith & Wesson Shield. That is actually being surpassed. But it's just one point of reference. So as a concealed carry weapon, I don't recommend this. As a house gun, there's no incentive at all to carry this as a bedside gun, because if you're having an static position in your bedroom, you can carry all kinds of weapons and not worry about size and weight constraints. So that opens up a whole nother class of weapons that you could carry. Some of them are not even handguns, right? So we could go off on tangents. So what I would say to keep this video within a reasonable duration is buy this pistol if you are a collector or you like Makarovs in general and appreciate history, because this has that in spades. They didn't make that many of these, as far as I can tell. They didn't import that many of them. Nice clean ones they're out there, but you're paying extra money. A couple things you're going to notice, like this example here, if you notice, it has to be imported back 30 years ago, it had to comply with the Gun Control Act of 1968. The way they did that is by putting these, what I describe as horrendous looking target grips on this gun, because these are not the standard grips that came with a East German Makarov or Makarov PM. They have a thumb rest. These have a thumb rest on them to give it come under the guise of being a sporting pistol. It's not a sporting handgun. This is a surplus military police sidearm that had aftermarket grips put on it to be imported. Now that I've had this gun for over 25 years, I think I'm going to go source some proper grips. East German grips are available, so I recommend if you buy a gun like this, switch it back to its original condition. Those are put on there for importation only. There's no 922R, nothing like that. You just make it the original museum quality piece. If this were on display, it would not be on display with Target grips. That's not period correct. That's not what they issued with them. So as a collector, you want to pay attention to that, at least in my mind, right? So let's look at the trigger pulls. That's always something that, even if you're not going to carry this gun, you still want to know what the trigger pull is, right? Is it going to be comfortable to shoot? The only way to know is let's test it out. So let's do 3 single actions real quick to see what your average trigger pull is going to be. Give me 1 second. All right, so 4.6 pounds. £4.8 pounds. And lastly, you know, 6.2 pounds. Let me do one more just to test. Sometimes I feel like it's me. All right, well, okay, 5.8 pounds. Interesting. So it doesn't feel like a 5.8 or 6.2 pound trigger. It's very smooth. Let's do 3 double actions. I'm going to hang on to this handgun so it doesn't fly out of my hand. Let's see what we're working with. Double action. Well, let's do a few more. 12.4 pounds. 12 pounds. And lastly, oops. 12.2 pounds. Okay, so it's roughly a 12-pound double action pull. That's what you're going to experience with your first shot out of the gate when you draw the pistol and the weapon's got a round in the chamber and the weapon's off safe, as we had previously talked about. That would be the way I would carry something like that. Your mileage may vary. That's not terrible. 12 pounds. It doesn't feel like 12 pounds because there's no stacking. It's not gritty. It's very smooth. So it feels closer to 9 pounds or even less, like 9.5. I can't really convey that through video. But yeah, so who used these guns? Pretty much everybody, right? The Angolan Bush Wars, Namibia, the Soviet-Afghan War, Syrian Civil War, Libyan Arab Spring, the Donbass leading up to the war in Ukraine in 2022. They're all over the Ukraine. The Cubans made a licensed copy, and I'm sure through military lend-lease, or not lend-lease, but friendship agreements and just dumping weapons on third world countries, the Soviets gave these to pretty much anyone who was willing to take them. So they proliferated through Central America, through that pipeline in Cuba. They're all over Africa. They're all over the Middle East. They're all over Europe. And they're in Asia because they were issued given to the Vietnamese as aid by the Chinese and the Russians. So going back to the mid 60s. So they're everywhere. They're not going anywhere. These are the Kalashnikov, in my mind, of pistols. This pistol has 27 pounds if you take the magazine out. So it's very basic. They've proliferated for 50, 60, 70 years. They've been making them up until recently. Some of them are still being made, depending on what market they're trying to satisfy. They are going to be around as long as Kalashnikov. That's my humble opinion. So in summary, to wrap it up under 20 minutes, get this gun if you're a collector, and if you like quality guns and like having the Cadillac of Makarovs, think long and hard about it if you're trying to use this as a self-defense weapon. They're very expensive for what you're getting. You can get much more expensive or much nicer options for that money, or in some cases, 2 guns for the price of what this costs to satisfy it. Again, don't pay too much and you'll probably be okay. And that's my summary review of the East German Ernst Thule produced East German Makarov in 20 minutes.